Welcome to the Suicide Prevention Show here on 1360 WLBK, a show that tries to shed a little light on the darkness of suicide. Tamara Sutton, unable to be with us today. You can always visit Tamara at tamarasutton.com. Chuck Seabrass, unable to make it as well. But making up for that is Citizen Mike. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's great to be here. Always a pleasure to be on this journey.
Well, thank you so much, and it's always a pleasure when you bring in a delightful guest, someone we got to know on a previous show, David Samuelson, and tell us about David and why he's here visiting with us today.
On an earlier show, David talked about his story of recovery, and it's fascinating. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder, he recognized the symptoms as early as age 6, and then as at age 12 and 15, he found a way to express himself in terms of writing, and just a fabulous story in terms of how he was able to express resilience and be persistent in terms of looking for the type of treatment that would work for him. And on this show, David wanted to talk about coping skills, and the part of what he was able to demonstrate with his life was taking control of his own treatment. David, welcome back to the studios. Pick it up from there.
Thanks, Citizen Mike. Getting the right chemical balance is important. It is of the utmost importance even before you can take the journey in trying to make your body, take your body to the point where it needs to be in order to function. And sometimes that's more of a challenge than it is for others. Luckily, that challenge was not as difficult as it is for most. Not getting into medication, I don't think that's something that is for the psychiatrists. I really feel that people with the illness understand what's going on with the illness a lot better sometimes than the actual psychiatrists and psychologists who have never actually experienced the illness itself. When I started my recovery, after I left my second marriage, I got myself involved in a support group, which was DBSA at that time, Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. And I started out just being in the groups and listening to the speakers every other week, and then I became a facilitator, and I felt that I gained some more understanding of myself and being able to help other people in that fashion. It's so important as a first step to put yourself into a place where you are in a situation where people understand you.
You know, it sounds to me like you're putting out two key points here. One is finding the right medication. It's not always easy to do, but finding the medication that works for you. And then also being self-aware of your symptoms and what is working for you, what's not working for you, and then finding the appropriate relationships to help you gain additional information about your illness so that you can be more effective at treating it. And it seems like you were able to get that from the DBSA.
Correct. And I think that I matured in my understanding of myself through that situation. And it got to the point where after my lithium overdose, I became so much more introspective at that point because I really had to, at that point, start putting my life back together again, or really, as it turned out, together. I wrote this poem at that time. It was published in the DBSA newsletter, which started my feeling about what it takes in order to get control of the situation. It's called Don't Avoid the Pain. Even if you think you're going insane, don't avoid the pain. There is no fame in placing the blame. Don't avoid the pain. Treat yourself right. It's tempting, but fight. Don't avoid the pain. Let's all be real. We're not ideal. Don't avoid the pain. We need to see clear and work against fear. Don't avoid the pain. Stand up steady and strong and know that you might be wrong. Don't avoid the pain. No running, no hiding, no ignoring, no evading. Don't avoid the pain. Our lives are based on avoidance of pain. The lesser of two evils, it's all the same. If you deal with the pain, there's no need for shame. conquering your problems and understanding yourself only happens when you face the truth and acknowledge ourselves as we are. Without that, no dreams can go far. Don't avoid the pain.
Very good.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. Totally insightful in terms of oftentimes we want to move away from the pain to get relief, and yet part of what you're noting is to not avoid the pain. And what you were able to do actually is find ways of dealing with the pain. And that was so critical because you were talking in terms of being treated with lithium and having basically a lithium overdose, so much that it was toxic to your system. And so you really had to take control of the treatment that you're receiving. And you did that by not avoiding the pain.
Right. And part of that was finding a psychiatrist that I could deal with as far as my medications were concerned. When I walk in to see my psychiatrist now, I walk in with the idea of what I want to do with my medication. And he usually agrees with me because I know more about how I feel than he knows how I feel.
And you were mentioning that just a little bit ago, and that's so important, particularly people that are diagnosed with bipolar disorder frequently. At least I have found them frequently to be very articulate, be able to speak well, think well. They're very creative, even when they're not in what we call the manic episode. And you understood what your symptoms are like, and you wanted to communicate that and insisted upon being able to do that with your psychiatrist. How did you find the psychiatrist that is working for you now?
After going into bankruptcy, after my business folded, I was forced, not having any money to pay for a psychiatrist, I was forced into DuPage County. And just like the job that I walked into by luck, I walked into this psychiatrist without having to pay a penny out of my pocket.
Wow.
But again, I had gone into the situation saying, okay, either I'm going to make it or I'm not. I went into DuPage County saying, okay, I'm either going to get SSI, what that means is Social Security, or I'm going to get some kind of help. They denied my Social Security because they said I could do some physical labor. So I said, okay, I'm not going to fight this. Okay, this is a challenge for me. Let's go see what I can do.
What were you able to find after that?
Well, I found a psychologist that was willing. It's not willing. It's somebody that is not going to be saying, okay, you need to do it this way. Mm-hmm. This is the proper way to do it. No, no, no. The only way to get anywhere with yourself is to listen to yourself, to hear what you're saying, and then actually say, okay, is this the way I want to be? And from that kind of a situation and the place that I was at after this lithium overdose, my favorite author is Rod Serling. Having the life that I've had, Twilight Zone makes a lot of sense to me. Back in 1954, he wrote a book called Patterns, which also became a play and a movie. He won his first Emmy Award for that play. And that got me into thinking about the whole idea of patterns and how we get into patterns of doing things. And the only way to change a pattern is to understand the pattern initially. So what I started doing is I set up if you can picture this, picture a diamond with 6 points on it. A point on the top, a point on the bottom, and 2 points on each side. In the center is basically, as I mentioned before in the poem, that's the pain or the insecurity. And what that insecurity or pain forced me into, I was able to say, okay, these are the patterns that I get myself involved with. The easiest place for me to fall, which was the bottom point, is procrastination. Don't do anything at all. Decisions are made for you, and I know 100% of the time, the decision that comes out is not going to be the one that you want. The top one, which is the hardest one to get to, is mania. Okay? On each side, on the bottoms, On the right side is deceit. Okay, you lie to yourself, you lie to other people. On the opposite side of that is addictions. You know, hey, you don't want to face it? Start smoking cigarettes. Grab that drink, whatever it is. Okay, above deceit on the right-hand side is anger. Okay, we get involved in anger. And on the opposite side of that, above addictions, is depression. And what I found is that once I fell down into procrastination, or I started off with deceit, I found myself going around that diamond or back and forth through that diamond. And I found myself, I said, okay, if I'm at one of those points, I am not dealing with what's going on in my life. And I have to do something about it.
And Dave, I have to ask you about the poem, because you nailed it when you said that we spend the majority of our lives trying to avoid pain. And it's true. When I think about things that I do in my life, most of the motivation comes from avoiding pain. And as you said, you procrastinate, you avoid things, you isolate yourself because you don't think you can deal with that pain.
The only way to, I mean, they have all these sayings, the early bird gets the worm and all that stuff. You have to understand the fact that we are only human. We make mistakes. We have to forgive ourselves, but at the same time, we have to understand ourselves. And without that understanding, we cannot grow as individuals. Okay, so you have this diamond here, and that was extremely important for me to be able to say, okay, now I've got a map. I've got a visual map here that shows me what my patterns are. Okay, well, there's got to be some kind of bridge from that point to get to another diamond that has the place of security. And that bridge is communication. So the bridge actually goes from anger. You have to turn anger into some sort of communication. So there's a bridge from the one diamond to that one top point to the other, to the left point of the other diamond, which is communication. Now, you can take two different paths from that point of communication. You can take it a diagonal point back down to deceit, which a lot of people do, and fall right back into the other pattern, or you can fall down into that diamond into the next point down, which is honesty. And if you can do that, then you're actually getting to a point where you can start dealing with the problems that you're having. And the other points that I've identified on that triangle are reality, love, commitment, and courage. And if you can combine all those together in dealing with your situation, it becomes a hopeful situation.
Listen, we have to take a little break here, too, but I love your description of the diamond because it's so easy to follow. You can visualize that and the different paths you referred to of. It's a great little illustration that you have there, David. I appreciate that. We have to take a break. We're going to come back, talk some more with David Samuelson, talking about tools, how to deal with recovery. Also, we want to mention the website, 1360 WLBK. Go to that website, click on the stop sign, and what happens, Mike, the magic?
You'll be able to download this show and other shows on the Suicide Prevention Show. Listen to them. You'll also be able to click and send us an email. Tell us what you think about the show. Tell us who you'd like to have featured on the show so that we can work together to stop suicide.
One conversation at a time.
Absolutely.
That's our goal. So we'll take a break, come back with more of the Suicide Prevention Show here on 1360 WLBK.
Every minute, someone in the United States attempts suicide.
Tragically, every 18 minutes, someone succeeds. 90% of people who kill themselves suffer from a mental illness.
It doesn't have to be that
way.
There is hope. There is the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
NAMI affiliates nationwide help individuals and families touched by mental illness.
Call 1-800-346-4572 or visit our website at il.nami.org.
You are not alone.
Welcome back to the Suicide Prevention Show here on 1360 WLBK. Citizen Mike and myself visiting with David Samuelson and his road to recovery. And Mike, you had a point you wanted to make.
He's talking about moving from one diamond to another in his own life, which moves from procrastination to honesty. And that in that honesty, he was able to recognize this, the anger, deceit, dependency, addiction, depression, and mania as characteristics of his life or patterns of his life that were saying that he was in this particular illness. And then it was fabulous what he was saying is the way that you get from there to another life that includes reality, love, and I can't read the rest of my own writing. He'll tell you in a moment. But it's the bridge. And it's the bridge of communication.
I love that.
And he talked about using the anger to motivate oneself to be aware of themselves and move on that bridge of communication to another diamond. David, tell us some more about that. What was that like for you, and how can other people do the same?
Well, the initial thing that's necessary, and the thing that I've talked to when I've talked to university classes, when I've talked to people with the illness, is basically just to identify your pattern. You know, and I found in talking to people that have the illness or know people that have the illness, most people, some people, fall into the exact same pattern that I have. Because it's just, you know, I guess I've put so much time and effort into thinking about this, and maybe other people have not had that opportunity like I did of a lithium overdose to take that time. But again, I took that opportunity to make my life better.
David, I think you're really right on the mark there, that people that are diagnosed with bipolar disorder have a tendency, certainly have the mania and have the depression. Those are two parts, but also the anger and how we are able to cope with things a lot of times has to do with deceiving ourselves. And that might simply be because we're ignorant. We don't know valid information. And certainly addiction is very much a part of that as well. And in your experience helped you be able to articulate that and share that with us today. And you're able to move that with communication. Tell us more about the coping skills that you're using and that you've been able to develop through this process.
Okay. It's so important to do what you love to do. To be with people that are going to accept you for who you are. And if they're not going to accept you for who you are, it's time to just step back and walk away, because life is too short. You have to find people that make you feel at home. And I was just so lucky to be blessed with the job that I have right now. I was able to take the best parts of all the jobs that I have. I'm good at dealing with people. I'm good at communicating with people. I'm good with customer service. I am able to create my life in that place. And something that is so important for me is respect. And I was able to gain that respect through that situation. I'm still searching for a relationship where love can be a part, but you know, this is a continuing, growing process. This never stops. It can't ever stop. The whole idea of gaining courage. I mean, you have to take. The movie What About Bob? I take that to heart. Baby steps.
Okay.
You have to take baby steps, because when you start on this mission, you're going to take a couple steps forward and then you may take 3 steps back, but you have to continue the baby steps to keep on going.
You know, the beautiful thing, though, too, is here you're sharing with us what those baby steps look like. That it's using communication and the anger to develop some courage so that you know yourself, that you don't avoid the pain, so that you find people that love you and that accept you, and that you use that acceptance to create more respect in your own life. And it sounds like you've been able to do that.
I had to come to the reality, which there's another part of that is dealing with reality. I had to come to the reality of the fact that I am a pot addict. I cannot touch pot ever again in my life. It may not be something that I'm physically addicted to, but emotionally, you put that bag or that marijuana stick in front of me, I'm going to want to smoke it.
Okay, but you recognize that pattern, and that pattern is that you felt depressed. What do you do now to deal with the depression?
I'm now taking a mood stabilizer with 2 antidepressants. I have worked with my psychiatrist to get these to a point where I feel comfortable on a daily basis. I get myself at least 9 to 10 hours of sleep a night. I need that, and I get it. You work within. It's really important for me to work within my own limits and know your own limits and not take yourself beyond the limits of what you can do or what you comfortably can deal with.
So you know yourself. Now, the medications that you're taking, how does that help you in terms of the addiction? Does it make it easier to stay away from the pot, or does it have no effect? How does that work?
I am blessed with the ability to walk away from addictions very easily because I have a strong will. I can smoke a pack of cigarettes one day, and I won't have to smoke any cigarettes for the next 2 weeks if I don't want to. But it's all a matter of making the decision that this is what you want to do. I don't know whether it's me or everybody has that ability. I think that they do. I think, though, that people don't want to face the pain as such. And a lot of times it's not just the physical pain, it's the emotional pain involved with making these decisions.
And I think that's very true, too. And the other piece, though, that you're emphasizing is know yourself and advocate for yourself, even with your psychiatrist, psychologist, and other people, instead of relying on them to tell you how to do your own treatment. And that seems to be part of your coping skills that you're using in order to get the life that you want to live.
I love music, so I surround myself with music. Music is the soundtrack of my life, and I constantly have music going on. I treat myself like a king because I am the king in my own castle. I am, you have to, if you don't treat yourself right, you're no good to anybody else. So you just get to a point where, and it's not being selfish, but you have to make decisions in order to take care of yourself. And let me just step back a second and talk about acceptance, because that's extremely important also. Many people don't want to accept the fact that they have an illness or that they have to take medication for the rest of their lives. One thing that you have to understand, whether it's gambling, alcoholism, mood disorder, whatever it is, you have to accept the fact that there's something wrong. And with mood disorders, there's some kind of chemical imbalance going on. And you have to take medication, just like a diabetic needs to take their insulin.
So by recognizing that these patterns of behavior that you're experiencing are actually hurting yourself, that kind of motivates you to do what you need to do in order to have the life that you want to live. And with being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, that means taking medication.
You have to take your medication. I was very lucky that when I was in the hospital, when I was first put on lithium, there was a boy that was 11 years old. He was put on lithium, and he was doing just fine. He went home. He stopped taking his lithium. They put him back in the hospital, put him back on his lithium. It didn't work.
Wow.
That's the way it happens with medications. You start a medication, and if you don't continue that medication and you go off of it, your body will change sometimes and not accept the chemical, and it won't work the same way. So that put me in a great frame of mind to accept the fact that this is my life.
And I have a quick question, David, in terms of talk about surrounding your people that accept you with that how you are, but when we talk about relatives or previous relationships, how do you deal with that? You don't cut yourself away from them, or you just, when they start talking negatively, like you said, if they said, "Oh, he's just pretending, he's behaving that way," How do you deal with that?
It's tough. It's tough. It's gotten to the point now with most of my relatives, I just don't talk about it. You know, I stay away from subjects that I'm going to be criticized for because I just don't need that.
So that's like demonstrating respect for yourself, even when you have family members, whether they're parents or cousins or uncles or whatever else, are disrespecting you. Right. And it's accepting yourself even when they aren't. And that's also kind of interesting because you're protecting yourself by avoiding their criticism, not allowing them to be in a place to do something that's injurious to you. That's fabulous.
That is.
And I also think that the other side of the coin is that I'm respecting them by not putting them in a point where they have to avoid the pain because that's not where they live.
Yeah, you know, and actually Tamara was talking about that. She was talking about the dis-ease with thinking about suicide or depression or having these types of experiences, and that what we need to do is get to a place where we can be at greater ease with ourselves and with the other people around us and stay connected with them.
Very good. Again, I'm sorry, we have just a couple of minutes left, and David's been so insightful here with the illustrations that you have and the terms of acceptance. If we could just kind of remind people the main points that you were talking about in terms of acceptance and medication and accepting the fact that you have to take medication.
Well, you know, unfortunately, people who are dealing with feelings of suicide or feelings of any sort of mental illness are going to go through their dark days. But in order to get out of those dark days, you have to accept the fact that you have an illness and you have to gain some treatment. And once you gain that treatment, that chemical treatment, then you have to go to work to fix yourself. And I think that that's not only true of people with mental illness. I think that everybody could take a look at themselves and gain from some of the insights that I have seen here. And then you have to gain your own coping skills, and then you have to set some goals for yourself, some successes, some hopes, dreams, things that are important for you. I mean, I would love to have somebody to spend the rest of my life with, but I've gotten to the point in my life where I am so happy with myself. I'm not going to settle. If I have to live the rest of my life with myself, my life is full. I'm a happy person. But if I can find somebody, that would be just great.
And, of course, one of our goals of this show is for somebody to hear you talk like this, David, and they may be experiencing exactly what you experienced or something very similar to that, and they may take that step. And again, don't avoid the pain, as you say, because it's such a great little karma to have. Because, again, I feel that so many of us live our lives to avoid pain, and you're saying don't avoid the pain and use that communications to get through that and get to the top of that diamond.
Absolutely.
David, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it very, very much.
You're very, very welcome.
And that's the Suicide Prevention Show for today.